Alright, hi Cavetale. I'm going to make just a short tutorial on Blockbench so that you can start designing your furniture. I've used Blockbench a little bit before. I'm not going to say I'm an expert or anything, but for making the Halloween weapons and a few of the Halloween wardrobe items, as well as a couple of unreleased things, I've used this before. So I think you can see some of my past furnitures here. I'll be able to give you at least a start on being able to make your own furniture. So this is the Blockbench program, which you can download. The web app is very similar. If you don't want to install anything, you can just do it on the website. We're going to start out with Java block/item. Create new model. I'm going to make kind of a coffee table thing. I'm going to call the file name glass table and leave everything else the same. If you've used Blender or any other 3D modeling application, everything here is going to be pretty similar in terms of navigation. You can scroll in and out. If you click in middle mouse, that's how you're going to rotate your scene. And you'll see the 16 by 16 grid here. That corresponds to a block. So we're going to start out up here, add cube, and that's our cube. Everything is going to be made out of cubes, much like in the game itself. We've got our controls up here, so move is already selected. You can drag your cube. Going to Control Z to undo and go back to our starting spot. You can also resize. Again, you can click and drag. You can do multiple dimensions at a time. You also have rotate up here. You can spin it like this. You can see the rotate moves in 22.5 degree increments, and you can only rotate on one axis at a time. So if I do this, because I already rotated along the green, you're not going to be able to rotate it along the red. It'll give you this message saying essentially the same thing. For furniture, I don't think you'll ever need that. It's not going to be super complicated, but just to let you know, there are a little bit of restrictions on your rotational capabilities. We've got pivot and some other tools up here, but really move, resize, and rotate. You can see the corresponding hotkeys, G, S, R, are going to be your bread and butter for all of this. In addition to resizing this way, we can also just type it in here. I'm going to make the side of the table to start with, so I'll go with 1 and 16, just to show you actually if you put in all 16s, that's a full block. So for reference to your scale, each increment here, your size on all these axes is basically 1 pixel. So we're going to do 1, 16, 16 is good. You can either Control C, Control V, or right click to copy and paste. That will allow you to duplicate this cube, for instance. You can see we have 2 cubes now. I'm not going to do that because an exact copy is also going to copy over the UV on all the textures and stuff. So unless you want an exactly colored recreation of this cube, it's best to just right click, delete to get rid of this one, and then make another cube. I'm going to give it the same dimensions, 1, 16, 16. Now you can see we have multiple cubes here. Unlike in Blender, you're not going to actually be fusing them or joining them together. However, if you want, you can group them. So if you add a group here, we'll call it just table, I suppose. Because these are super simple, I don't really use this, but if you want to make groups, you can. You can click and drag your cubes into your group. And you can see if I click on a cube, it will highlight it, and then our movement or our resize or rotate tool will snap to it. You can see as I go back and forth, each one gets highlighted. You can also click on them directly and it'll highlight on your list here. Additionally, you can rename these. So if I call this one like left, for example, this one right, so they're not all called cube, that can help you to keep track of which cube is which more easily. So let's move this one over. Okay, we've got our 2 uprights. Let's make a 3rd cube here. So it's going to be the shelf. This one's going to be flat. Let's do 1, flatten it out. This one 16, this one 14. Now, One thing I want to caution against is overlapping cubes. You can see here the bleed through on this purple through the green. We don't really want to see that, so I could either rotate this or I can change this to be 14, 16, and now you can see if I drag this over, it fits in. So make sure your cubes are not overlapping when you make them. That'll just make sure the textures don't clip through each other. I'm going to drag this up about halfway, a little less than half, and I think that's good for our shelf. I'm going to make one more cube. This is only going to be a 4 cube thing here. I'll call this one glass because I'm going to make the top of this coffee table glass. Copy the dimensions, 14, 1, 16. Drag this over in the middle and all the way up. So that's all the modeling I'm going to do. Just super simple, 4 cubes is all, and we're going to move on to texturing next. Now you can either import a texture, which is if we're going to use a texture that already exists in the game, or create a texture. For import, if I click import texture, it'll open up this folder that I have with all of the vanilla textures. Let's, for example, just use andesite, I guess. Click here. Now we have the andesite texture. If we want to apply this texture here, we can click on a cube, right click, go down to texture. Right now it's blank, click on andesite, and there we go. This one cube that I had clicked on selected now has the andesite texture. You can also move this section here, zoom in or out, and you can see whatever's within this blue perimeter is what's going to be visible here. So you can drag this around if it's smaller. You can drag this around to specify exactly what part of the texture we're going to be using, what part's going to be visible on the model itself. I'm going to undo this because we're not actually going to be using any andesite. One texture that we are going to be using later is glass, but first let me just right click, delete this, and create a texture. When we create a custom texture, we're only going to be using one per model. If you want to use multiple vanilla Minecraft textures, that's fine, but we're only going to be using one created texture per model. So when I click on this, I'm going to name our created texture the exact same thing as I did the model, so glass table. And then I'm not going to touch anything else. Okay, so we got glass table here. You can see different colors up here are going to correspond to the model. So we got this white with the blue outline right here. We got our yellow strip here, blue here. So all of the different sections here are going to be, it'll tell you the direction to north, up, west. All of these it'll show you, and you can click up here too, are going to correspond to something on the actual model. Now, if I select the whole thing, just left click and drag. You can hold shift to retain your previous selection. I can go right click, texture, glass table. Now you can see rather than just this top part, the entire model has this glass table texture selected. Now this entire time we've been in edit mode, but to make the texture we're actually going to go up and switch over to paint. Up here you have all the tools that you'd expect to see: paintbrush, copy brush, paint bucket, your eraser, color picker, draw shape, all of this stuff. You got your brush size, opacity, softness, that kind of thing. You can change your brush shape. I don't really use anything except for these three, sometimes the eraser, and these values here. You have the smooth brush, which is what I normally use, as well as the pixel brush if you just want to do one pixel at a time. So I'm going to go smooth brush. 5 is a good size. I'm going to pick kind of an off-white here. You can see we have 2 different colors. You can click between them, and you can click the arrows here to switch between. I'm going to have this kind of off-white color selected. Now when you paint, you can either paint up here on the overall layout, or if I undo that, you can paint directly onto the model itself. Doesn't really make a difference, whichever works for you. I'm gonna make this a white, so I'm just gonna paint bucket and do the whole thing. Again, you can do that on the model too if you want. I'm just gonna paint bucket all up here, and as you can see, it's all white now. Now, for the majority of this, I do want it white, but not necessarily this blinding white. So if I come up here to this color selection gradient, I'm going to choose kind of a grayish color, I'm going to go back to paintbrush. I'm going to tone the opacity down to, let's say, 155. Now if I go over this up here, you can see it's filling in on the model itself. Kind of has this like zigzag texture. I think that looks pretty nice. It's almost like the chiseled quartz. And to keep it consistent with the other models I've made already for other furniture, I like having this little kind of gray contrast. So that looks pretty good. The only thing I'm going to change is that I want this top cube here to be glass. I think that would be interesting. This for a little shelf, I think it's already kind of neat, but I want to make this into glass. So if you go back into edit, I'm going to import a texture. Again, you can only have one custom texture, but you can import as many textures that are in the vanilla game as you want. I'm going to go to glass here, and now we have glass. So I already showed you that you can change your whole model if you have it selected, or one cube into a texture. What you can also do is if you look at whatever face you want directly, and you right click on the desired texture, you have this option to apply to face. So if I apply that to this face, you can see this top or up over here is glass, but the sides still white and the bottom is still white. So you can have a single cube with 6 different textures on it if you like, one for each face. I kind of want to do it this way just so I have this white here and it looks like the glass is sitting inside of kind of a white frame rather than just being floating. I'm going to do the same to the bottom. So if I go down here, zoom in, scroll wheel, again, middle mouse, move around, have this selected, you can see it moves over to down, right click on the texture that I want, which is glass, apply to face, and now there we go, we have both the top and bottom, so whether you're looking at it from the top down or from the bottom up, you'll be able to see through. Now you can see I have these rectangles up here. These correspond to actually what part of the texture is visible. You can see this entire thing is the glass texture, but the rectangles are smaller. You can change their size to make them larger or smaller, but basically whatever's inside of this blue perimeter is what you're going to see. So you can see right now these 3 pixels are visible right here and right here, as well as this corner. I kind of like that so it blends in with the game more and it's not completely see-through. However, on this downside, if you look here, completely see-through, because we have only the transparency right here, there's no actual texture. If we were to drag this into this corner, you can see now the corner shows up on the model. Like I said, I kind of like having the little bit of detailing here with the pixels, so I like it that way rather than just being completely transparent, but it's up to you when you make your own. Now I think we're pretty much done with this. I might make some changes before release, but for the purposes of this video, I think this is good, especially because my last recording was 22 minutes long and I want to make this one shorter. If you want to see how this is going to look in game, you can come up to these 3 lines, preview scene, and you've got all of these options for different biomes. So plains, this is what it would look like in a plains biome. Any of these others underwater, in case you want to make some underwater furniture. We'll just go back to plains though. You can also toggle shading right here, but I think that looks nice. If I saw this in game, I think I might include that in some of my builds. From there you can, if you want, screenshot the model. You can save this, copy it, whatever you want, and that's a pretty good representation, so you can tell how it's going to look like. You can also, if you go into preview scene at the very bottom, you can disable or enable the grids. You can also toggle Minecraft player, so you can get kind of a reference scale, what it's going to look like. See if I have everything selected, I can drag this over. So that's about how it's going to look in game. That's kind of handy, I think. So I'm pretty happy with the way this looks, and if you are with your furniture, you can come up to File here, and we're going to save project as, I'm just going to call it glass table, put it alongside all of my other furnitures here. Save. There we go. It'll save as a .bb model, and you can open that right back up. When it's actually time to submit the furniture, we are going to export it. This export block/item model will turn it into a JSON file. your textures and your model are actually saved separately. So we're going to have instructions on the Discord when it comes time to actually submit your furniture, how to do that, how to submit each file individually. Also, because the textures and models are separate, that's why we want to limit it to as few textures as possible, and there's going to be that hard limit on only one custom painted texture. You can use multiple Minecraft textures, they're already in the game, but as few as possible is better, and only one custom texture. So glass is fine, limit it as much as possible. This glass table, any sort of details we want, like the kind of off-white painting we did, that's all going to have to go on a single texture file. But for now, we're just going to save it, save project as, like I just did, and we'll worry about exporting later. So hopefully that was everything you need to get started. Like I said, I'm totally not an expert at this, but there are lots of other videos out there and lots of documentation. I will try to answer any questions that you may have if you want to message me in the game or on Discord. But that should cover about everything you need, all the tools and different techniques I went over here. That's pretty much all I've been using for all the furniture that I've made so far. I demonstrated everything that I needed to make all this different stuff. I made a sink and tables and a stool, so I think you'll be able to get pretty far with this, but definitely reach out, ask questions. There's a lot more you can do with Blockbench if you desire. For now though, that's going to be it. Have fun making furniture, and hopefully we'll see your stuff in game someday. Thanks for watching.